Hello. I, Sam Valentino, private toon detective, want to talk about my findings regarding a slightly controversial 60s Saturday morning cartoon. Somewhat controversial because it was pretty much considered a stealth advertisement for cereals. I'm talking about Linus the Lionhearted, an animated series sponsored by Post Cereals and produced by Ed Graham Productions that ran on CBS from 1964 to 1966. This is one of the earliest Saturday morning cartoons on network television, based on a series of successfully popular post-serial mascots aimed at kids, created by Ed Graham and his advertising agency, after the success of their commercials, leading them to star in their own half-hour show. Already, this was kind of leading to some problems. Each of the characters that star in their own segments were the mascots of kind of post-serial. Linus was the spokesman for Crispy Critters, an oats-flavored cereal that came in the shape of little animals. There was also Rory Raccoon, the mascot for Post Toasties Cornflakes and Sugar Sparkled Flakes, and the Postman Lovable Truly, who was the mascot for Alphabet cereal at that time, along with Rice Crinkles having the controversial mascot So High because of the association with rice coming from China. The most recognizable character in this series, though, was Sugar Bear, the only one of those cereal mascots still appearing today, for what was called at the time Super Sugar Crisp, but now known as Golden Crisp, because in the United States it was considered a bad idea to have the word sugar in a breakfast cereal's name.
Can't get enough of that Golden Crisp.
Can't get enough of that sugar crisp, 'cause I forgot to put the fog lights in.
Today I still see people, when they learn of the Linus the Lionhearted cartoon show, be surprised when they learn Sugar Bear was a character in it. The show would utilize a simple formula, with serial plugging limited to the sponsor tags and commercial breaks. There will be a fun, jaunty opening theme showing all the cereal mascots beginning the show.
Roar, 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 Linus the Lionhearted. Linus is the one who lines up the fun. He's the host of which we boast. So roar, 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 Linus the king, Linus the star, Linus the Lionhearted.
There would be a wraparound story in each episode presented in short segments involving Linus, more often than not teaming up with Sugar Bear and getting into some kind of wacky hijinks, with each segment leading into one of the regular shorts. First up was a Linus short, involving his ruling the jungle because, well, he's a lion, along with all his subject friends like Billy Bird and Sasha Grouse, along with the Mockingbird, who lives up to his name in repeating just about anything Linus or anyone else says. And a few other animals who wouldn't be found in such a jungle setting, like Dinny Kangaroo, complete with stereotypical Australian accent.
Maurice, can I bring me nephew Norman on the camping trip? He's right bright for his age. Blimey, you're right. How we get him down, you bloke?
In the first season, Sugar Bear alternated with Rory Raccoon in being the second regular short in each half hour. Sugar Bear would usually save the magical Granny Goodwitch from her sorcerer rival Mervyn the Magician, and sometimes help out his lupine friend Big Benji Wolf, who had a tendency to mix up the words he'd speak and was also a good wolf.
I'm afraid you're not going to like what happens to the wolf at the end.
Oh, I never read the end of Bad Wolf stories. I get to the happy middle and go back and boon it. I go back and read it again.
The Rory Raccoon segments described him as a hometown hero for protecting the town's cornfields from C. Claudius Crow, and for some reason he was dressed kind of like a detective, with that deerstalker cap Sherlock Holmes' similar gumshoes wore. Rory had a cousin named Zeke who worked as a circus clown, and there are at least 3 episodes featuring Rory telling a story about Zeke's antics. The third story in each half hour would be about lovable Truly, the postman, and his dog Lawrence, trying to evade and foil dog catcher Richard Harry, nearly, who previously worked as a silent movie star. And the fourth and final short in each half hour episode featured So High telling a story, usually based on existing classic tales and given a Chinese flavor, featuring a certain life lesson. Yes, back then such stereotypes and caricatures were still considered acceptable for Saturday morning cartoons. Times sure have changed. And after the wraparound story about Linus and sometimes Sugar Bear concludes, the closing credits would roll, and they were unusually depressing for a show like this, feeling more like a funeral dirge version of the Mickey Mouse Club's alma mater closing theme. The show featured an all-star voice cast of its time, such as Sheldon Leonard as the Tiger Linus, Carl Rayner as Billy Bird and Sasha Grouse and Denny Kangaroo, Bob McFadden as Rory Raccoon and Lovable Truly and So High, Jerry Matthews as Sugar Bear, Ruth Buzzy as Granny Goodwitch, Jesse White as Claudius Crow, along with Jerry Stiller and Anna Mara and Jonathan Winters doing some additional voices. The first season mostly used library stock music for the background score, while the second season had original tunes by Hoyt Curtin, known for scoring numerous Hanna-Barbera cartoons. And speaking of Hanna-Barbera, the show used a bunch of familiar Hanna-Barbera sound effects in a fairly limited and repetitive fashion.
There, saved the day. Thank you, Sugar Bear.
Out of my way.
Lawrence!
And when combining that with the show's art style and animation, it bore a pretty strong resemblance to the Warner Bros. 7 Arts Looney Tunes of the late 1960s, featured in several YouTube poops on this channel. Heck, they both even shared a couple of animators, namely Ted Bonnickson and Ed Solomon. Even Sugar Bear can be pretty similar to Cool Cat at times, but without all the dated beatnik mannerisms. The show ran for 2 seasons, after which CBS canceled it, and then it began being rerun on ABC Sunday morning block, by which time they phased out rerunning the Rory Raccoon segments because of the declining popularity of Sugar Sparkled Flakes cereal. These reruns continued until 1969, when the FCC came into the picture, with a new rule preventing characters on children's programming from being used in commercials, forcing the network to pull the show because, of course, it starred cereal mascots. That same year, ABC had similar conflicts with the FCC over Saturday morning cartoons based on Mattel's Hot Wheels and Skyhawks toy lines, especially after a rival toy company complained about them fundamentally being half-hour commercials for toys, leading to them being canceled fairly quickly and far stricter guidelines in place by the FCC when it comes to TV cartoons and advertising. That is, until the 80s came around with all those syndicated cartoons based on toy lines. But after ABC pulled Linus the Lionhearted in 1969, from the early 70s until the early 80s, the show was still rerun in syndication, with all the explicit post-serial mentions and sponsorships removed to comply with the new law. The show hadn't been seen after that, especially with Crispy Critter cereal being discontinued in the early 70s. But even with that, Linus the Lionhearted was still in the Macy's Thanksgiving Day Parade as a character balloon, well till 1991.
Well, I know it wouldn't hurt him to use some cartoons made in the last 50 years.
For a long time afterward, the show was pretty much lost media, with only a handful of complete episodes circulating around. Some of them as black and white kinescopes, especially because CBS was still telecasting in black and white up until 1965, fairly long after ABC and NBC began broadcasting in color. But then MPI Media Group came to the rescue a while back, and they began restoring the show with assistance from several animation historians such as Jerry Beck, Mark Lauser, Ron Curer, and Steve Stanchfield. As such, the show started airing on MeTV Toons last September in a very late Sunday night to Monday morning time slot. But it's pretty neat to discover what was once considered a long-lost Saturday morning cartoon, and a fascinating piece of animation history. Yeah, I haven't been active here for a few days because I was at Anthro, New England this past weekend. Also still hoping to get more scoop on the current Warner Bros. Discovery drama, but something relating to it should be happening this week. And stay tuned for further video nets sometime afterward.